The one who comes in peace is always welcome. The one who comes to teach is always welcome. The one who comes to learn is especially always welcome. Positive and creation energy to the Organic African Paradigm YouTube channel. I'm going to do your lecture for you, and let me jump right into it. I'm going to go to this book. Let me read one of the mythologies in this book, and then we will start our lesson. So I believe, let's find one lecture here, one creation story. Okay, let's do a book strike God on the toe. This mythology comes from Dinka people in South Sudan, the Dinka people in South Sudan. Abuk is the name. So Abuk, the first woman, is the primordial woman, later elevated to a god. So first thing here in the book, the page 6, first thing it talks about is a woman named Abuk, the first woman on planet Earth, the primordial woman. And they said that she is elevated to a deity. So this, grab your pen and note that in African culture, a person can become a deity. So a person can become a god. A person can be called a god, right? So in African worldview or African perspective, a human being can be elevated to the status of a god. They can be called a god, and they can be worshipped. They can be venerated the way a god can be. So that's why you sometimes you'll be saying Africans have a lot of gods. They're polytheists. They're poly this, poly that, right? The reason they're poly this and poly that is because there are many people that were elevated to the status of a deity or a god. Okay. And the main reason these people were elevated to the status of a god or a deity is because these people did phenomenal things. They are extraordinary, the pinnacle of extraordinary Africans. They are the highest level an African can reach in our conception, in our philosophy. The highest level an African can reach. If you reach that level, you are elevated or you're catapulted to a god. Okay, so this is something that you need to understand. When people say Africans are polytheists, they're this and that, it's because ancestors are, you can be elevated to the ancestor, you can be given a status of an ancestor who becomes a deity or a god. Okay, gods. So in Africa, the word God is contextual. It's not like those people who practice organized faith-based systems where they say there is only one God, there's only one ancestor, right? In Africa, we say there are many gods, right? And if you translate that in context, there are many ancestors, and every one of those ancestors did many things. And then if you can't try that in the faith basis and say there's only one God, and this God did this and he did that, and there's no other God but him, that means there's only one ancestor and there's no other ancestor besides this ancestor. No. In the African context, a God equals an ancestor. Now, what do we call the supreme being? The supreme being is called the supreme being, right? That's the word that the African use. They call it the supreme being. So they don't have a word, a God, it can be an ancestor. The supreme being might be above an ancestor, right? Or the omniscient, omnipresent will be above an ancestor. Um, a deity, is an ancestor or spirit of nature or something like that. Deities, gods, they are lesser beings. God is a lesser being. And then the supreme being is a higher being, and the omniscient being is the higher being. So in African context, when you use the word God, it's context based. What type of God are you talking about? Are you talking about someone, an ancestor who was elevated to the status of a god, or are you talking about a deity which is part of the race of deities, or are you talking about the creator? If you're talking about the creator, then you don't use the word God, you use the word creator, right? You can You can associate the creator with the word God, then you make them less. So you have to say creator. And then if you were talking about the omniscient being, that is the supreme being. The supreme being would be the omnipresent force across the cosmos. Let's continue. Abuk, the first woman, is the primordial woman, later elevated to a god. Abuk, sometimes spoken of as the wife or mother of Denj or of other divinities. Remember, in African context, the children are promoted to divinities. Everyone is considered divine. You know, the mother of Dench, that means she's the mother of this being, this person called Dench, or of other divinity. She's the mother of other divinity, other gods. So that means she's the mother of other first ancestors, the first human beings that were on planet Earth. She's the mother of all those human beings. Okay, that's how African context or African philosophical mind would understand. Presides over women's activities. So this goddess, Abuk, um, who is the first woman and the primordial mother, and she's the mother of the gods. She is the she presides over women's activity. So she would be equivalent to what the Greeks call Hera, right? She would be equivalent to what the Greek call Hera. So that would mean Hera is a human being. Hera, the goddess Hera, would be a human being because in Africa, goddesses are people. Goddesses were primordial beings, primordial Africans who were elevated to the divine. A creator or the creatress would be the supreme force, right, above them. And then the omnipresent or the supreme being would be above them. That's the hierarchy. So they were the first humans on Earth, but the animals were already present. So how did they come to Earth? The story about how the first woman convinced her husband to come to Earth with her is all across Africa. The first woman or the first human woman, the mother of Earth, she convinced her husband to leave the celestial abode to come to planet Earth. So it was her idea for them to come to planet Earth. Um, so especially the growing of millet and brewing of millet beer. In the beginning, the supreme, you remember now the supreme. So Africans, when they're talking about the creator, they mention the supreme. That means this person is above our ancestors. So the supreme creator allowed Garang, the first man, and Abuk, his wife, to plant 1 grain of millet a day. That was sufficient, and they were able to live from it. But Abuk, hungry, once planted more grains than one, and as she did this, she struck the toe of the supreme creator. She struck the toe of the creator. Um, he was so irritated that he retreated from humanity, severing the rope that linked heaven and earth. Since that time, because of the activities of Abuk, humans had no have to endure sickness and death. So Africans, we experience sickness and we experience death because of our disconnection from the supreme being. So the supreme being is said to have lived on the planet Earth. Our connection to the supreme being was why we didn't experience death, was why we didn't experience sickness. And when the supreme being retreated from the earth, we as a consequence begin to experience death and we begin to experience sickness. So one, the Africans were living above. The first woman and first man were living up in the heavens. The woman and the first man came down to earth. The idea was, according to the story, the woman convinced her husband, we don't need to go back to heaven. We can make this planet a place for us to stay. So the first woman started to come up with ideas, agriculture. We need to plant food. We need to do this. We need to tame the animals. So that was her mission. So the first African woman began to do those type of things, and her husband followed suit. So because of this, they were, they became self-sufficient. And when they became self-sufficient, the first African men and African women became self-sufficient, they now they distanced themselves from the creator, or the creator distanced himself. So when the creator retreated, the Africans started to experience death. So I have a guest here. I believe somebody's here. Positive and creation energy to you. I share to you as well. Thank you for coming through. So we are again talking about how the Africans perceived this world. It's very important that Africans, you learn your Sankofa. You learn how your ancestors perceived the world, how your ancestors' philosophy was shaped. If you don't know how they saw the world, how their philosophy where it belongs, then you don't know how to go about it, right? So remember, the first woman, she led the way for the people to come to earth. The first woman. Then she is called the mother of the divinities, the gods. She is the mother of the gods. Okay, so keep that in mind. And there is a supreme being. The Africans have a supreme being, and the supreme being, or the supreme creator, is above the first woman. The first woman is a god, then the supreme being is above the gods, is above. Okay, so now we have the next one here. Growing agriculture. Agriculture was the first thing that the Africans created on planet Earth. They created agriculture. And then when they created agriculture, they begin to what else did they begin to do? They begin there was a rope. The Africans speak of there being a rope, there being a connection to the divine. During their time on planet Earth, there was a rope, and every single African talks about a rope. And we are going to go into this rope. We're going to talk about what this rope is that they were able to connect to the divine. What is this rope? And when this rope was covered, it was severed. How did the Africans try to connect to the divine? When the rope that existed, the mechanism which they used to communicate with the divine, which existed, was called the rope of heaven. There was how they spoke to the creator. They spoke to the divine. When the rope was cut, the Africans started to use the pyramids. They built the pyramids as a way for them to travel to the world of the creator. So before, they had a rope, a means to get to that divine. Then that rope was severed. Then generations later, they built the pyramids. The pyramids serve as a means to reach the divine. Okay, it became the doorway to get to the divine. So they would send the king. Upon the king's death, the king would go to the divine to supplicate with the ancestors or the supreme world on behalf of the people, on behalf of the civilization, to supplicate. That is the reason the pyramids were created. The pyramids were created as a substitute for the rope that previously existed. So he was so irritated that he retreated from humanity. So the Africans say the creator, the supreme creator, used to live on planet Earth in the beginning. But then they say the supreme creator retreated from the planet Earth, went away. So we find this in Kemet. How did the supreme creator leave the earth? How did the supreme creator go away from the planet Earth? We find this in the story of Ra, the ascension of Ra. When Ra used to live on the planet Earth, and it reached a point where Ra had to, he couldn't live among the human beings anymore because the human beings were becoming arrogant. The human beings were becoming self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and they became, they were disrespectful. So Ra, with the help of the sovereigns, was able to be lifted up off this world, and Ra was able to be, ascended between the horns of his mother. So he was placed between the horn of his mother. Ra was placed between the horns of his mother, and he was lifted up to the first layer of the what we call Ra went through 5 stages to ascend to the heavens. Ra went through 5 stages. So the first stage, which Ra lifted up, is called the Kepri, morning, the ritual of the dawn. Ra is lifted with the assistance between the horns, and Ra's wings, the wings are, they're not strong enough for Ra to go up. So Ra changes, he transforms into a ram. The ram now, form of ram is the one that they call Ra, Rama, Rama. Rama or Ra is the ram, is symbolized meaning goat, ram. Kepri means the creator at dawn, the creator, the creator one, right? So Kepri means to create, the creator. Then he transforms into Ra. Ra means the ram, the stubborn one, means the strong one, the powerful one, the brilliant one. Then he goes on, he is lifted again up to the zenith. He's lifted up to the zenith. The people call this Aten. Aten means the brilliant one. He's shining. He's so bright. He reaches the zenith where he's brilliant, radiant, flowing with light, illumination. This is called Aten. Then when he's reached this level, then he reaches the zenith, he begins to descend. When he begins to descend, they call him Atum. Atum now means he's completing the cycle. The cycle is completing. So he's setting, he has set. Then he goes into the underworld, the hidden one, he's called Amen, the hidden one, the one who is beneath the into the darkness, into the vast universe, the unknown. So his light, Amen, while he's in the state of Amen, his light is represented by the moon. The moonlight takes his form. Okay, so now the moon is receiving his light, right? He's Amen, but the moon is receiving the light. And so this is the form he takes on. So 5 stages: Kepri, Kepri, Ra, Ram, the ram, and then Aten, the brilliant, the sun disk, or the wing disk, the eagle. Aten now be the eagle. And then after Aten, we come to Atum. Atum now means the the sleeping one, the one who now goes to sleep, to slumber, right? And Atum now means he's gone to sleep, the dead one, the one who dies, the one who is past, is perished. And when Atum perished now, Atum is buried, or he's buried into the underworld. The underworld now is hidden. He is hidden beneath the waves in the ocean, is hidden, so he is called Amen. And that light of the Amen is what is hitting the sun, causing the moon to shine, etc. So this is the 5 stages. And every morning, the sun goes through these 5 stages. This is how the Africans conceive the world. Okay, so this is how they conceive the world. That's why they said um, when he retreated, he used to live on earth, and then he retreated from humanity. So in this entire book, they're telling you the story about, he used to live here, retreated. They tell you all the things that happen on the planet Earth, all the things, when the first agriculture was planted, when the rope was connected, the spiral rope was connected to the heavens, when it was cut, and when the connection between humankind and the divine was severed, and then when humankind tried to reestablish that connection. They tell you every aspect of the story. And this is why Africans, your Africans have their own conception of philosophy, right? So in Greco philosophy, we have Plato, Socrates, etc. The word philosophy means the love of Sophia, loving Sophia. In Kemet, we have the goddess, or the sovereigness, the ancestor known as Ma'at, right? Ma'at, Sepet, is the word for philosophy, right? So let's see here. I will give you the accurate spelling of the word. So is she ma ti. Okay, shimati or su. The word su also means knowledge, wisdom. Su means knowledge or wisdom, or the word shima ti meji means to cultivate wisdom or to give knowledge, to give the cultivation of wisdom, knowledge. Or ma shi ma shi mashita or mash or yeah mashi means to cultivate the pool of wisdom, or shi ma then ta meji aru. Again, all this is the African conception of things like philosophy, knowledge, shima su. These are how Africans would perceive things like philosophy. Philosophy in the African context is different, right? For example, the way Africans use philosophy is meant to give you wisdom, is meant to solve problems, is meant to give you an idea. And so, in times of war, in times of strife, in times of conflict, wisdom or philosophy it's not, doesn't grow. It doesn't people don't adhere to it. In times of success, prosperity is when this system becomes available and Africans can use it. They can access it. But philosophy is equivalent to concepts to edify or to explain reality, to explain existence. For example, Ra has 14 Ka. The 14 Ka of Ra, each of the Ka of Ra represents a philosophy. So, for example, one of the Ka of Ra would be Sa, which means perception. If we say the vital to life philosophy of Sa, meaning everything that has to do with perception, the philosophy of perception, how one perceives, then we have the vital to life philosophy of preparedness, one of the 14 Ka of Ra, which is preparation, to be prepared, for someone to prepare, to plan, things like that. That's a philosophy. So then that philosophy tells you how to solve your problems. Gives you wisdom, and you have to take those wisdom and apply them practically. You have to use them in the material sense or the physical sense, right? These are wisdoms that you can apply physically and use physically. So that is what we have when we talk about the 14 Ka of Ra. And I'll explain the 14 Ka of Ra and another time I have to go. But next time I will talk about the 14 Ka of Ra. And we will keep going through this book here until you get all the story. The story is the same thing. Abiriwa, from Ghana, you hear the story of Abiriwa. Abiriwa, you agitated the creator, and then the creator, he distanced himself from the earth. Then we have Abuk. Abuk also agitated the divine, and he distanced himself from the earth. Then we have another first lady in Nigeria from another part. She did the same thing. And this is the story across Africa where this thing happened, and then the divine separated itself. And from that point, the African had to become self-sufficient on planet Earth. They grew agriculture. They were farming people, agricultural people. And then after that, they were vegetarian at first. They did not eat meat. They did not, do none of those things. But then gradually, there were circumstances that came up and causing them to eat meat. But there are later stories that explain why they ate meat. And then even when death came, when the Africans started to experience death, how they begin to die. All those stories are told in this book. And once you know them and you know why Africans have philosophy, you can use African philosophies to interpret reality or to solve your problems in the world of the living. However, the philosophy of Plato's and Socrates, those are different. Their version of philosophy is like they're philosophizing, they're speculating. In Africa, you're not speculating when it comes to philosophy. There's no speculation involved. When you're talking about philosophy, you are giving good advice to someone. You're literally giving good advice, wisdom, all of those things to people. And people who love wisdom or good advice, they would adhere to your proverbs, your message. And people who dislike wisdom or good advice, they will distance themselves from it, right? So philosophy as it is told according to Plato, Socrates, that's not African philosophy. It doesn't work the way African philosophy works. Philosophy as it is told according to African is cultivation of knowledge. Cultivation, it means I've cultivated knowledge, and that knowledge is now available for you to use. I have cultivated. She means pool. She means water, like a pool of water. Pool of water means wisdom, knowledge. Is where wisdom and knowledge is symbol is that's a pool. Ma means to cultivate, the harvest blade. So the harvest blade means to harvest, to call. So ma'at means, she ma'at means to cultivate wisdom, knowledge. Then there's ma'at sepet. Ma'at sepet also means to cultivate wisdom, knowledge. But this time you're talking about profound knowledge from the stars. That's ma'at sepet. So I will leave you all there. Positive and creation energy to all, Ta and Ma'at to all, Anke and Ubuntu to all, Madi and Sia to all. Bring subscribers to the channel, or do the needful so that channel can be go back to what it was. I think before we had 1,500 followers on this channel, but then we deleted the channel and we started from scratch. So do your part to make the channel go back to what it was, and then I'll tell you more of these stories. There's about 500 stories in this book. So by the time we're done with all 500 stories, you should be pretty familiar about African mythology. You should be well versed in African mythology. Okay, everybody, positive and creation energy to all.